Welcome to the Last in Line podcast, where we discuss faith, hope, and truth in the lives of amazing servant leaders. You are in the right place if you crave purpose and if you hunger for a life of significance. This podcast applies biblical truth to our daily lives, and we pray that you walk away encouraged and inspired. This is the Last in Line podcast.
Greg Wanberg, man, welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Thank you, John.
Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, you did. Actually, I'm impressed. Most people get it wrong.
I am 2 for 2 this week. I pronounced somebody's name and they said, wow, nobody ever pronounces that right. So I don't know. Got lucky, I guess. All right. Well, watching your stuff, looking at your website, man, and faith, fury, and fortitude, man, are three big pillars that you stand on when it comes to your coaching and helping dads. And so I don't want to steal too much thunder. And I guess we need to probably, for the listeners, and I know we have some crossover friends and mutual friends, and you have a podcast. And so I know we got a similar circle we run in, but talk about maybe some of your teen years, high school, college, maybe just sort of break it down where we can get an idea of who Greg Wanberg is a little bit.
Yeah, that's so for that, I want to take it back to kind of younger years before teen.
Okay.
So I had 4 brothers from my mom's first marriage, my birth mom's first marriage. Was the second oldest, but I had the quality traits of the eldest. And so there was a lot of like chaos in the home. And I was the one that would rebel. I was the one that would stand up, so things were harder for me because I would push back. And and I don't exactly know where it started. I just know when I was 7 years old, I realized if I could just die, I wouldn't feel so much what I was feeling about myself all the time. That particular day, we were playing Monopoly, and my brother, I think he won. He got a spot on the board that took all my money, and I hit him. And I think I hit him in the face. I don't remember. I just remember hitting him. And it felt so good to just like put her on somebody else. But then I felt so bad. I was like, I love my brother. I don't want to be like this. And then I felt so ashamed of myself. And it was kind of like this cycle that I was always in, whether it was something I was actually doing or things that were blamed on me, things that I was coerced into doing, or things that I was just mimicking based on the adults that were around me. I would end up like getting in trouble, even if I shouldn't have. And just hating myself. And so again, like going back to this realization, if I could just die at 7, that it would just stop. I remember going back into the bedroom. We all shared one bedroom, my 4 brothers and I, in this trailer. And I felt so terrible, John. I just hated myself. And I didn't know, like back then as a child, I didn't know that you had a choice on who you turn out to be. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember praying, God, take this away. And without going into too much of those details, I always knew who the Lord was.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my teenage years, I got into black magic. I got into Buddhism. I got into witchcraft. And people would like say that they were atheists. And I always thought that was the stupidest thing. Like, how do you not believe in God? That's just dumb. Like, I'm doing this because I want to. I'm not doing this because I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm just acting like an idiot. But remember praying, Lord, take this away. Take this away. Like what I'm feeling, take it away. And he didn't. I'm like, okay, well, then kill me. Like, take me away. And he didn't. And I remember just this realization at like 7 years old, like, oh my gosh, this is my life. How I feel right now and the things that have been happening to me and what I've been doing, like, this is my life. And so I cursed to God as a child. If you're not going to help me, screw you.
Mm-hmm.
And open myself up to some really, really dark things, man. I used to see really dark stuff that people make movies out of nowadays. And I kind of made a game out of it. It gave me a sense of validation. It gave me a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. And so I just kept holding on to all of these dark things, like very, very dark things. And got into drugs. I got into crime. I was running from the cops all the time. I had warrants out for my arrest all through high school with multiple jurisdictions around where a high school was located. there was a point when I ran away from home. So I was homeless in the wintertime. All of this again, like just feeling, I felt stuck, right? I felt like I am a loser. I'm an agent of destruction. As long as I'm here, people's lives are going to be worse. But I didn't know suicide was an option. I just knew that I wanted to die. And so I just lived a very, very destructive, chaotic lifestyle. I hung out with very bad people. I hung out with losers. I hung out with very dangerous people. And nothing ever happened. Like I never went anywhere. And at 16 years old one night, I was just so tired. I don't know if you've ever had like a panic attack or a mental episode or anything like that. It's really weird. Sometimes for people, like you can feel it in your nervous system. It's just a strange thing to say, right? Because your nerves, you feel your nerves. Everybody feels their nerves, but it's like this dull, like ache. You know how when you get the flu and you have the body aches, but it's like deeper inside of you. And I remember 16, I was just so tired. I was tired of feeling that way all the time. I was tired of being a loser. I think I just hurt some other friend that I had, just did something else dumb. Like I wasn't making money. I wasn't going to be going to college. Like high school was coming up to an end. So I just decided I just don't want to be here anymore. And I went to take a knife to my wrist and I couldn't do it. I couldn't cut my wrist. It was the first time I actually tried to kill myself. I tried legitimately twice. This is the first time. And I started carving up my arm, and all of a sudden I had this vision. Instead of the drugs and the dirty clothes and the blood and my messy room, I was seeing faces on a Rolodex, just flashing by, hundreds of them. And I heard this audible voice that, Greg, if you choose death, they will never know me. If you choose life, they're going to know me because of you. Now, at this point, I'd got kicked out of a home I was staying in because I'd stole a joint from one of the adults that was there. My brothers took me to a youth group. I had no intention, no desire of going to church. I just didn't have anywhere else to go. So I'd kind of been exposed again to God, to the gospel. And then this night happens. And I didn't say yes that night. I remember being scared because I felt again like I felt when I was 7, how trapped, that I have to go through this. I don't want to go through this. I don't want this to be my road, but I don't know how to get out of it. And so that actually happened 3 nights in a row. I had that vision, different faces, heard the audible voice of God, same thing. If you choose death, they will never know me. If you choose life, they're going to know me because of you. 3 nights in a row. And on that 3rd night, I said, okay. And that was it, you know? So with skipping a lot of detail and as brief as and concise as I could possibly make it, that's really where I got to hear, it was this salvation story that wasn't about me being saved from my sin or me being a better person. It was Jesus is like, hey, dude, people are counting on you to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Do the right thing. And so I had this, like this sense of hope that came from this sense of responsibility. Like all of a sudden I knew I had to find a way out of what I was going through. And I knew that other people were waiting for me to do that. And that sense of responsibility gave me hope. And then that hope gave me fuel to change. And that was it. That was it. That was when I was like 16 or 17 years old. So it's been about 21 years.
Okay. Well,
and that shaped my life, man.
I mean, that's a powerful story, and not everybody has a testimony quite that deep, right? And so yours had significant meaning because you obviously knew you were here to influence certain people that would not know Christ if you weren't here. So going through high school, and we all know when you get on the road of faith and you start following Jesus, that doesn't mean you're without pain or hardship or adversity at all. In fact, you've got a target on your back now, right? Now you're off the bench and you're a threat. So after high school, I mean, I know your story a little bit. You talk about how you maybe weren't always clicking on all cylinders as a father, maybe a husband. Like, so once you became a father, like, I tell you what, before we do that, let me, I can't skip over this because I do this with everybody, and I don't want you to feel left out, but I have what's called a life sentence. And the fact that you were talking about you were running from the law quite a bit, that reminded me. So we got to do this. But put a pin in what I was talking about, because we're going to get there about how your dad situation, you as a father situation. So, all right, here we go. You're going to finish these sentences for me. And the reason I do this, I mean, I know maybe the audience gets a little tired of this life sentence thing, but man, it's so powerful because everybody's different. Everybody's unique. I do different sentences with everybody, but it helps kind of facilitate maybe more layers being folded back of the person. So this could be powerful. You take these however you want to take them. But here we go. My pain has become my purpose in the form of blank.
That's so good. My pain has become my purpose in the form of maximizing each day as best as I can and using my abilities to help my children, to help other people. I mean, for me, that's like really what it comes down to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when we got on here, I could tell you pour into your parenting. You're all in. I can tell your son was attacking you, so that was pretty cool. All right, let's see here. See if I want to move these out of any particular order here.
Okay.
How about this one? One thing I wish my dad or father figure would have done is
pushed me harder while loving me more.
I might want to make you unpack that comment, because that's a good one. I mean, that one's going to stick somewhere. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. I have this, you know, the pictures of Jesus where he's dolled up. He's got that like Instagram glow, soft skin filter on.
Right.
He's got that little baby sheep over his shoulders.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the backstory behind like why shepherds would carry sheep that way?
I don't.
Okay. So when sheep would run off, the shepherd would break the sheep's leg. Once they got the baby sheep, they would use a rock or a stick or their hands or their knee or whatever, and they would snap the leg.
Dang.
And they would have to carry the sheep over their shoulders that way until the leg healed. And what this did is it taught the sheep that you cannot stray from my presence. Right. And so versus walk out your salvation with fear and trembling, right? Like you were just alluding to how this is a journey. It's not just sunshine and rainbows once we give our lives to Jesus. Like there's still work to do. Pick up your cross daily and follow me. I mean, like the entire Bible is painted clearly with this story, and then this picture just personified it. And so, in danger but safe is a way that describes my relationship with God. It describes my relationship with my kids, and it describes my relationship with the fathers that I coach and the people that I've worked with in the past. I think that where a lot of people get into trouble is that they're too safe, right? They're too safe. They're so safe that they can make their excuses. They're so safe that they can hide behind their propriety or knowing the right answers without being able to pass the test. But then we have this danger side where we're just kind of like, we're afraid of being exposed. We're afraid of being called out. We're afraid of getting in trouble. But the right danger, you know, like the best fathering is like, when I bust you for something and then we talk about it, so you really do understand why that wasn't good. And then I approach you in a way that leaves no shadow of a doubt. Like there's no question that I still love you. Not at all. But there's also no question that you did the wrong thing. And how do we do both of those together is like been my relationship with the Lord. And so, yeah, that's what I was talking about.
That's good, man. I like it. No, it says spare the rod, spoil the child, right? So, I mean, we're called to discipline. We're called to have boundaries and to enforce certain things. So that's good. All right. How about this one? I realized a need for coaching dads when I noticed blank.
So dads in particular kind of started a few years ago when I really started to focus on dads specifically, because I had more dads asking me like, hey, how are you doing that? Like, why are you so close to your kids and hanging out? Like my children at this point, you know, they were older. They're like 6 years old, 8 years old, and they were different. They were completely different than all the other kids that we would hang out with. They were different than all the kids on the block. They were different than all the kids in their classes. And it had to do with me. And then, you know, when I started to unpack that, I realized like the way that I chose to be a father was one of the primary things that got me out of the hell that I was living through for such a long time. And so it's like, dang, I really do understand this. I don't know everything that I understand yet, right? Like I wasn't aware of exactly what that was. I just knew that I had a key. Like I had something that was going to help dads change their relationships. And Malachi 4:4, man, that was my pastor. He was my spiritual father for a long time. And he died a couple years ago, but his heart was Malachi 4:4, restoring the hearts of the fathers to the children to the fathers. For me, I needed to change. I had to change because I was not going to pass what I went through down to my children. And I knew that if I did nothing, it would pass on to them. And for me, that was unacceptable. That was not going to happen. I would do whatever I had to change. And that changed me. Like just that pursuit, that desire, that drive consistently over time did something in me that nobody else was able to do. And you know, so I also saw like there's so many things for dads of like dads getting help. Like there's a whole mental health industry and stuff like this. But how much of it was actually breaking the cycle so the dads were not passing down any longer what had happened to them? I saw a big gap. I was not convinced that cycles are actually being broken. It just looked like dudes were actually just feeling better. You know what I mean? So that was a lot of layers, man. That was a hard one to answer quickly. So thank you for bearing with me on that. That was a good question.
I asked these intentionally because I know there probably are multiple layers, but I'll ask one more and then we'll go into, because I have some questions that those answers are leading me to, but I don't want to get out in front of my skis real quick. So, all right, how about this one? It's a little lighter, maybe, depending on you how deep you want to go. But how about this one? My biggest area of growth in 2023 was, it doesn't have to be limited to dad, parenting, but
yeah. It was believing in myself and acting on that real time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the struggle that you were finally breaking through when it comes to believing in yourself? Because that's a broad brush.
Yeah. Like being in a type of work for years and I was just miserable, but I always resorted to working harder. Right. It was like the double-edged sword of a lot of the gospel where I would resort to just working harder. And it was actually a conversation with John Gardina where he was like, Greg, look, you already work hard. That's something my best friends have been telling me. My spiritual father had told me for a long time. I had this conflict inside myself and I would try to just work harder. And people were like, you already work hard. This is not the answer that you're looking for. But John Gardina, he was the one that actually helped me to really get clear on, dang, it's the job. Like I'm trying to fit myself into a hole that I do not fit in. That's the problem. And for me, that was a huge light bulb that also exposed like this expectation. I believe that to be successful in this mission of helping fathers and growing this, I had to first be successful at a job long term. And I don't know why I believe that, but I just did. And and this fear that if I'm not going to be successful at a job, how could I ever possibly be successful at my own thing? Like successful for, like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And so, it was a lot of like, kind of like reworking just my expectations of myself and coming to this place where all of these things that I love about myself, my intensity, my story, how thankful I am for all of this, like, it was a deeper layer of, hey, brother, God gave this to you and he loves this about you. So just receive it.
Yeah. That's good, man. I appreciate you sharing that because I think there's people, I know there's people that fit into that category of trying to work too hard and just run faster and it'll be okay. Like it's sort of the same theory of if I just make more money, I'll be fulfilled. And it's sort of not the case. In fact, it might leave more of a void if you're not putting the right thing where it belongs in that list of priorities. So, you say you kind of worked hard and kept working harder, thinking that would fix it. And I know we talked about some of the dark that was your childhood and things, and without going into those details, I kind of want to know after all of that. Like I know we guys get through stuff. They have that either scars or just some of the images that come back. Talk to the audience a little bit about what do you do when that creeps back up? Because like, I know God delivers us, God redeems, God washes everything. But I know how our minds work. Okay. And I know the enemy. Yep. So I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we thought that you never had those thoughts or images, kind of rear back up again. What do you do in those moments? Like, how do you break through that and overcome some of that?
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. I just need to say, like, I've got a bachelor's degree in human services. This whole idea of like mental health, especially like depression, it's been my life. That was a very, very good question, man. That was a really good question. First of all, when this stuff comes up, I have to come back to it. It's one of three things. Number one, like I will remember that night. Like, why did I even get on this path? Why did I even get here? And I'll remember that night that this isn't about me. He's going to take care of me, but there's other things that I'm supposed to take care of. This isn't about me. Number two, I used to butt heads with a lot of like professionals, mental health professionals, clinical professionals. I was told for years, John, that there were things that I struggled with that would never be cured, and cure is like a loose term anyway, really. I mean, you could be on the best medication for the rest of your life and you're not really cured. You're just detached from the sensation of what you're going through. Like, that's not cure. Yeah. But like, it's never going to change. This is your life for forever. The hope that you have and this tenacity to see it is noble, but it's useless. And I remember just like two questions would come up. Like, do I want that to be true? And, if I'm feeling like this all of a sudden, what dark thing did I let in? Like, I just had such this overwhelming sense of responsibility for my mental health. Like the moment I gave my life to Jesus, like the light was on and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing something for this. And so boiling it down to the moment, that question of, do I want this thing to be true? Right? You are a loser. You're not going anywhere. Nobody cares what you're talking about. Like you did this, this, and this. How are you supposed to do that, that, and that? Right? Like, there's no way. Like, all the accusations, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's like, well, do I want that to be true? No. What do I want to be true? When I get to heaven, I want millions of children standing with their fathers behind me saying, because of what that man did, we got here. Right? That's what I want. I want my children and their bloodline to be forever altered. That what happened with me, I will carry that pain to my grave and it stops with me. And now there's a new road for them. That's what I want, right? That's what I want to be true. And then that second question of what dark thing did I let in? Because that responsibility, I realized whenever these emotions would flare up, that stuff would really come back up. It was always because I had just agreed with something in my mind. And it's really quiet. It was really hard to pick up at first. Holy Spirit gave me that question. I'm guessing because I'm not that smart to just come up with this question. It's a really good question. What dark thing did you just let in? But that reflection on it helps me get back on track. And then the third thing too is just remembering, like, however loud these feelings are, like, they're not real. They're not. What I choose to do is real. God's love for me is real. My family's love for me is real. My willingness to receive all that is real, but this feeling that I'm going through right now is not. So how do I get over this moment and continue with my life?
Yeah, and I know what you're saying there, and it's probably semantics, but I'll tell whoever's listening that thinks feelings aren't real. I think we know the feelings might be real, but it's based on a lie. those feelings are based on lies, but they are
Yeah.
true, real emotions and feelings, obviously. But what you let happen with those and what you do with them is going to be based on what you believe to be true or false. And a lot of that dark thinking, not a lot, I would say all of it. If you don't line it up with scripture, then it's not true.
Yes.
Right? If it doesn't align with God's word, then it's not true, and you should
Yep.
absolutely spit it out. But unfortunately, a lot of people are led by their feelings, and feelings are real, but they're not leaders. And so, they're followers. They should be followers. But, to your point of that kind of rears its head sometimes, and you're at least aware enough to say, okay, that's fake. That's not me. That's not God. Jesus didn't die for that. Like, I'm not going to go with that, or else what did he die for? So I'm going to stay on this track. So that's good that you're aware, and you're, a lot of people listening, hopefully they can get there to where they at least know what's true and what's the lie. But you obviously pour into your kids. You obviously pour into dads. You obviously coach people that are dealing with mental health. I got to know though, you can choose which way you want to go with this, but I would be remiss to not ask, how has it affected your relationships in life? Maybe a significant other, I don't know. Are you married? Have you been? Are you not anymore? Like, this isn't a marriage podcast, but I mean, we're men, and I need to know, what have you learned from some of the tolls it's taken on a relationship, let's say, if it has?
Yeah, that's so.
Didn't plan on asking that either, so
no,
I think that must be.
I love this question, and in fact, I finished your episode with who was it, Javier?
Yeah,
like earlier today while I was working too.
Yeah.
So, this is part of this is where the enemy has such a stronghold, John. Especially when it comes to mental health stuff, right? Because there are still moments, probably last week at some point, I was listening to something and I withheld love or encouragement or peace or stillness from my family because of what I was feeling, right? Now, depending on how bad somebody's episode or however you would say it is, it could be a lot worse than just like withholding something. It could get pretty destructive, pretty chaotic, pretty abusive or whatever. But it's like this catch-22. It's like, I don't want to behave like this, but because of what I'm feeling, it's like I'm an animal in a cage, and I forget that I'm in control, and I'm not mature enough or strong enough to handle these sorts of things in the moment the right way, and then I just lash out or I boil over or whatever. And now, because I did that, now I'm ashamed of myself. Now I'm telling myself I'm not worthy, or I've actually ruined a relationship, and those real life consequences just compound on everything that I was feeling that was bad about me in the first place. And it's like this weird spiral. It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy, like this dark prophecy that we fulfill for ourselves. So for my relationships, I have to say 100% like complete honesty. I am like thankful to God that I had the people in my life that I did. Right. Which is why I'm so big on coaching. Like, people, you cannot do this alone. I didn't do this alone. After I tried to commit suicide, I had our senior pastor at our church that became a father to me, and his son was our youth pastor, who became like a best friend and like a shield to me. And they both walked with me for 15 years of my life. I got adopted around the time I was 18 by this family. It was this big spiritual thing. It was amazing. And so I had another mom because that's what I needed at the time. I had my best friend was at one point my boss. My wife was a virgin when we got married. She only been drunk one time, and it was on accident because she turned 21 and she had no idea what alcohol did. She was like a whole pure, righteous, strong woman of God. And it was just the favor of the Lord to put these such incredible people in my life to help me. And if I didn't have them, I wouldn't have made it. So to answer your question, for the first couple of years of my daughter's life, she was my firstborn. I was going through this 7-year, it was like a psychotic break. Every single day. It was like reality was distorted, man. I couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't at certain points. The voices in my head were so loud. They were almost audible, but they were all accusatory, just like nasty stuff just being thrown on me. I was wanting to kill myself almost every single day. Like my wife, like I'd be sweeping the floor, like cleaning the house, and she would carry our daughter. And I would look at my daughter and I would feel so sad because I was such a POS. I was such a miserable, good for nothing. And in my heart, I would say, like in my spirit, I would say, like, I'm sorry that you got me for a dad. Right. And this was like my world. The consequences of it was I wasn't even there for my daughter. The consequences of it was I turned my position in the church into an identity, and I held on to that thing like it was dear life, which put a gap in between my wife and I and my kids and I. There were some unhealthy expectations and relationships that were formed in the church, which didn't help me. But early on, this was probably like 2012. My wife, like I almost pushed her to wanting to kill herself, man. And there was a point where she told me that she had been considering suicide because when I would talk with her about what I was going through, it was a lot of like what she wasn't doing right to help me, what she wasn't doing enough to help me. And so I just started spitting all of my pain into my home and was unavailable for my daughter, was unavailable for my wife. And even to the point where my wife was considering suicide because I had convinced her that she was the problem. Yeah.
Wow. So we don't realize the venom, right, that comes out and the poison that it and who it infects. And I mean, we don't realize I'm guilty of the same. And it looks different for everybody, right? But we can come across with sarcasm that cuts, right? We can come across with just angry words that cut. I mean, any kind of verbal venom can cut people, and it's all relative. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like sometimes some of our own pain can become our weapon, right? And then we kind of, I don't know, I guess we deflect it on other people, and it scars people and it breaks relationships. So, obviously, well, I say obviously, I don't know. You seem pretty healthy. So is it fair to assume, that you've restored your relationship with your daughter?
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%.
Okay. See, that's a good assumption.
Yeah. So what happened that long story short, there were a couple encounters with God and then a few events in life. And so, my wife married me because she knew that I was a man after God's heart. And I didn't know that was a phrase that was attributed to David until years later, but she told me this specifically because one night I was like melting down and I'm like, why did you even marry me? And she's like, because you're a man after God's heart. And she said, I know that no matter what, at the end of the day, you're going to do what's right. And she was right. That was who I was. Like, and that was my savior. The people that God put in my life and my desire, my just bullheadedness, like absolute refusal to not do the right thing at the end of the day, that was all I had. And so, for my daughter, I'm like, Lord, I need to change. And Holy Spirit told me not knowing is not a good enough excuse for not doing it in regard to being a good dad.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be a dad. I'm not even a man. I wasn't even a son. How am I supposed to be a man? And then how am I supposed to be a father? Like, this is crazy. And Holy Spirit said, not knowing how is not an excuse for not doing it.
Right.
Here's the expectation, the blessing, and the invitation, brother. Come with me. Right. So that happened. Then there was my desire to do what's right.
Yeah.
And then with our church, like the church started to split. The senior pastor and his son, who was the youth pastor, they just started to go different directions. And at the time, God was like, hey, you guys are done here. Like, you've done your job. It's time to go. And so we left. And it was a culmination of all of those things together that just like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's one of those weird things. Like, certain things are pretty clear. And then there's other parts that feel like a dream. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know exactly how that was significant, but it apparently was.
Well, how old are your kids?
10 and 12.
So your daughter's 12?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're coaching guys, and you mentioned dads on your website. You mentioned 30-year-old dads. Like I know you're not limiting, but I'm sure it includes that demographic. What would you grade if you were given a grade to our nation of dads currently, based on what you've seen? Obviously, social media can't be a barometer to gauge everything completely, but you hear enough, you see enough, you've lived enough, you coach enough to give me some sort of educated grade on our dads as a whole. What do you say about us so far?
You have really good questions, man. I was excited. I like even
I don't
listening to
know
your
if they
podcast. I'm like, this
are.
dude asked some pretty good questions.
We'll see how your answer is, and that'll determine how good my question was. No.
Yeah, man. All right. I'm gonna like couple little rabbit holes real quick. I honestly would say like a D.
That's D like David, so that's not good
Yeah,
if
D.
you're keeping
No.
score at home and you
No.
know anything about grading scales.
And I would say it's only a D because there are dads like us who really do try. And
there's
if
that
there
many.
wasn't,
So
it
you're
would
saying
be
that there's that many that don't try, is what I'm getting.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, that's alarming.
But here's the thing, man. Like, so because it is socially acceptable to not be a great dad, right? So like good dad, good B plus, maybe, but it's not. It like being a good dad is not enough because a good dad is not going to really do everything he has to do to be the man he's supposed to be, to provide the absolute best influence for his children that he's supposed to. A good dad is just, he's not going to abuse them, right?
Right.
He's not going to
Let them starve. Yeah.
let them starve.
Yep.
But that's enough. That's enough. And it like, and so, I mean, I would say, ask dads, what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a father? And how many dads do you think would answer the question like with the word legacy or bloodline or lineage or one of those things or something synonymous with that? How many dads?
Yeah. I'd say very few that aren't believers would use it. Now, believers might have a different perspective, but I don't think that makes them a dad by default, like a great dad, just because they believe in God.
Right.
I know it doesn't.
Yeah, and
unfortunately,
I've seen that it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, society's allowed a sliding scale, and the bar has gotten significantly lowered over the years, and so we're sort of permitting. We're permitting the inferiority deal with dads. Like we're allowing, and then you factor in the whole feminism and toxic masculinity, all that. Dads, I think, are afraid to step up and go, this is how we do it. This is their standard. They don't want to get canceled by their own family. But I'll let you continue, but I just want to throw that in. I think the scale has slidden to a point where the bar has been lowered, unfortunately, and now good, right, is the old great, and we've convinced ourselves that that's okay.
Yeah, and there's this old evangelism tactic to ask somebody, do you think you're a good person? Of course, person's most likely going to say, yeah. Like, okay, why? Well, because I don't murder people. I don't rape anybody. Okay, so you think you're good because you're not bad. So now the standard for good has become bad. And that's where we are with fathering. That's where we are with fatherhood. And going back to what I said about how few dads would actually use terminology like legacy, lineage, bloodline, generations, like that's not on the mind of fathers. And this is why I would say D-, because if that is not on the mind of a father, he's not going to worry as much about what he does in private as he should. Right? Dads who are not truly worried about legacy or bloodline or lineage, who aren't thinking that broad, won't even boil it down to the moment to realize, hey, what I'm doing in private is actually going to affect my family, right? Like pornography. That's a huge example, right? Like how many dads yell at their sons about making better decisions when the dad, like, he can't even keep his promise to himself, right? How many dads like try to justify, oh, well, I can go on the carpet with my shoes, but you can't. It's okay for me to do this, but not you. And yeah, man, that's why I say D-, because dads are good, but they're just good. They're not good enough in a way that really is going to shape the future. They're still leaving so much of their children's future, their children's potential, the children's identity, their children's skill and development and strength up to chance and up to society.
Sure.
Instead of taking the freaking reins. Like for me, man, like it was a blessing because when Holy Spirit asked me that or told me that thing about not knowing how, right? I started seeing everything with my daughter like chess. And there was this constant question in my mind of, okay, in 20 years, she's probably going to have children. How is what I'm doing for her, with her, to her right now, how is that going to affect those children? Right. And that question drove my behavior.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can guarantee that if we ever would just play out our decisions, you know, right?
Probably make better ones.
I tell my kids, like, whatever you're about to do, if there's a question, play it out 2 hours from now, or 2 days from now, or 2 weeks, and see where that's going to lead you, and then reverse engineer back to this moment, and that should make your decision fairly easy. But dude,
real quick, there's one thing that I've done really, and this is what I work. It's so important to know how to apologize to your children.
Sure. I would say
even
too,
when I was struggling.
I'm sorry. It seemed like I was going to let you get your train of thought, but I interrupted you, of course. But no, I was going to say for people listening to that, like, I think it's an art though, to not seem pathetic and overdo that. Like if guys that feel like almost this false humility of everything needs an apology, right?
Yeah.
Even like discipline, or even calling somebody out or holding somebody accountable, boundary. Like, too many dads will take what you said and be like, oh, well, I should probably apologize for making them take out the trash yesterday.
I love that you said that.
You know what I mean? So I want to make sure, and I know that's not what you meant, but I think guys take it incorrectly.
Well, and it's a really good caution, because it'll
but it is necessary. I've done it plenty, so I'm not saying I don't do it.
Well, and so, like, apologizing, right? Like, if I was losing my temper and I raised my voice at my daughter because she was not listening to me, but me snipping and yelling at her is not discipline, right? That's not what she deserved. That's me allowing what I'm feeling to dictate my behavior,
right,
as a dad, which is failure. Like, that's weakness and that's failure. Right. I'm not going to beat myself up and crucify myself. It is weakness and failure. Okay. I acknowledge that. Now what do I got to do? So what I got really, really good at doing, John, was telling my kids, hey, just being honest. Look, I am not like, I'm feeling kind of bad about myself a little bit right now. I'm not going to tell you why, but when you did this thing, all of my frustration with myself came out at you. How I treated you was not your fault. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Right. Or, hey, I disciplined you, but I didn't fully listen to everything you were saying. I see now that I overreacted. How I treated you had nothing to do with what you did. That was my fault. Will you forgive me? I'm sorry. Right. And getting really just being open with them, man. Like, hey, I screwed up. I made a bad call. I shouldn't have done that. Like, we expect our kids to do this, but we get really weird about it. And, for dads, listen to this, like, you have no idea how much respect you're going to earn from your children if you just do that sincerely. You're going to win their hearts, man. Like, I just,
and I got to tell you, I like to bookend that situation with, at the end of what you just said, that doesn't make what you did okay.
100%.
You know what I mean? So you're bookending, like, you discipline or you reprimand, and then you're in the middle of that. You're like, hey, but I may have handled that a little different, and then you bookend, like, you still don't do that. All right. You still don't do that. So I like that, because then the apology disarms the situation, but then you can swoop in at the end and be like, but we still have rules. We still have boundaries. Dad's still in charge, that kind of thing. So that's awesome. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Which is, and you have to, right? Because dad is in charge. But again, if dad's only in charge, now we're back in the space of that D-, because dads are just good. Like, A dad's not supposed to just be in charge. It's like, why? And what is he doing with it that matters? I mean, like, I gave up drinking in August. Self-development is imperative. If you're a father and you are not working on yourself, you're not working on your body, you're not working on your mind, you're not allowing people in to scrutinize what's going on and to help you and strengthen you and hold you accountable and push you, you are failing your kids. You just are, right? And in August, I gave up drinking. I realized I had a problem with it. I didn't get drunk. I would just have a couple drinks a night, like over the span of a couple hours. So I wasn't even buzzed at all. I just didn't like the way that I felt. I started feeling convicted about it. And I had this compulsion. I needed a drink. And I told my wife, and our kids were in the car, but I was talking to her. She's like, hey, I think I got a problem with drinking. I need to look into not doing this anymore. And I had this thought of like, maybe I could not drink again for the rest of my life. And that thought kind of like I had this little like pucker reaction to that thought. Yeah. And so I was like, that I do have a problem. So we were at dinner a couple weeks later and my wife and I were having a beer and my son says, hey dad, I thought you were going to be done drinking. And this is where like being the kind of dad that I am has changed my life because I didn't respond with defending myself or, oh, it's just a beer, any of that nonsense. What I did was the truth. The truth was I had compromised my integrity to the point that my son had to question it. That's what I did. Right. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. I actually wrote my children a check, both of them, for $10,000. If I have a sip of alcohol, I have to pay them $10,000 cash. And it's a family promise that we have. So it's like the fact that I like put my son in a position where he had to question my integrity. And that comes down to me not working on myself. Like I knew I had a problem and I wasn't doing what I should have to correct it. And it's as small as the details it seems. I'm not getting drunk and wasting money or beating my wife or cheating on her or whatever. But
look, guys can fill in the blank with something. It doesn't have to be drinking. Like that applies to a lot of areas, right? That could apply to somebody that's an emotional eater. I mean, that could apply to whatever you're looking at on the internet. Like you can fill in the gaps. There's countless things that applies to you. So I'm glad you said that. I mean, dude, it's what in your life is driving a wedge, A, between you and God, and B, between the guy you want to be. So what would the guy you want to become do in this moment?
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? And a lot of people, when you put it like that, you could ask 10 guys and 10 of them will say, I want to be a better guy, or I want to be a good guy. I want to be great. I want to be this. None of them are going to say, I want to be a POS, right? So out of those 10, if they ask themselves, what would the guy I want to be do right now? Well, guess what? You either drove a wedge in between you and that person, or you got closer to that person by that decision you made right there.
Yeah.
That applies to a lot of people. Well, before I let you go though, I mean, this could, it's time is flying by and we could take another hour probably, but I want to just get maybe you to give us just whet our appetites on your coaching structure, model, curriculum, that kind of thing. Cause I want guys to reach out and maybe take it deeper with you that more long-term, but you mentioned 3 pillars. I think I said them at the beginning, but faith, fury, and fortitude. I don't have to know really the reason why you have faith in there because I get, and I don't have to ask why it's first. So let's just suffice it to say, guys, if you don't want to suck, you got to get right with the Lord and you got to make that a foundation. It's got to be first. Okay, let's get that out of there. So how did you come up with fury and fortitude?
So the word fury I actually got help with by the gal that did my logo. Because I was just talking with her, like I'm a verbal processor. I have to talk with people. It's just how God made me to be. But fury was because, like, going back to those questions when you're asking, like, when it comes up, what do I do? Do I want this to be true? Right? Do I want this to be true? And for me, I'm a very, very angry person. I have so much passion inside of me, and fury. I just love the way that word sounds. It sounds great.
Sure.
Like rage. Like there's so many poems about rage, about this violent obstinance against something or for something. Even scripture, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence and violent men take it by force. The kingdom of heaven recognizes the violent pursuit and the hearts and the minds and the lives of men. And the kingdom of heaven loves that crap. And the kingdom of heaven rewards that crap. That's fury. And for me, I had to, like, There were so many times, John, where I would like, come on, like slap myself in the face like I'm waking myself up. I don't want to be like this. I'm not a loser. I'm not a freaking loser. I'm not lost. I'm not hopeless. So stop thinking like it. I would yell at myself. I would talk with myself in the mirror. I don't know if it was David Goggins style. I don't even know who that was at the time. This was a long time ago, but this fury, I refused. I refused to believe and to base my life and my behavior on something that I didn't want. I did not want what I was hearing in my head to be true. I wanted what the Bible said to be true, right? I wanted a great life to be true. I wanted a great relationship to be true. And so the fury was just like this downright, like, I'm pissed and I'm going to do something about it. So faith, like the faith, of course, is like the believing, the hope, the mindset. Mm-hmm. The fury is like the action that is in accordance with the faith and the hope and the mindset. So like doing something about what I say I want. And then fortitude comes down to lifestyle. You know, it's fortitude comes down to like keeping that legacy mindedness. Fortitude comes down to like, I have miles to go before I sleep. I have promises to keep. You know, that this is not over. I need to keep going, and I need to keep getting better, and I need to keep finding ways to alleviate the pressure, to clear up the mess, to strengthen my heart, to strengthen my mind, to become more pure, so that I can run the long haul without getting tired. And so, yeah, faith, fury, fortitude also is right thought, right action, right systems, or mind, body, and time. You know, like guys that are battling with depression, a lot of it, so much of it is about, they know they're wasting their life and they're doing things that they regret and they're not doing anything to change it.
I mean, that's what I've heard hell to be defined as, is like on your deathbed, you get a glimpse of who you could have been. Like that's disappointing, right? But guys, sometimes they get so underwater when it comes to, I feel like it's insurmountable to get where I want to be. Like I'm overwhelmed with the thought of climbing out of this hole I've dug for myself. And so it's this catch-22. It's this quicksand that guys are in because they've created this hell. They want out, but they feel like it's too far. So they just marinate in the hell longer, you know, and like you said, not because they don't know how to get, because that's not an excuse. It's they feel like they can't. So I think somebody like you, getting people around you, help you pull them out of that hole, because you can't do it by yourself. I think that's key. And guys, and then you factor in pride into that. Then we've got this cycle of what we see now with the D- dads, and they can't get out, but they're too proud to ask for help, so they are fine with suck. And you'd be surprised what you can get used to, right? So suck can taste, you know, better over time if you let it. Yeah. But yeah, faith, fury, and fortitude, I love it, man. Because I mean, if more guys would take the fight to an enemy with that fury, they might not lose so much, right? We might not be defeated so much. We might not crumble so much. Like, let's take the fight to the enemy instead of being on the defensive all the time. So before I let you go, give the group a parting shot on spiritual warfare. Like, you've been knee deep in it, and I know we could go for hours on that, but maybe try to fit it in to a few sentences here, that what you think guys need to know about there is an enemy, he's coming for you, and you're not meant to live at the hands of that enemy, because we win already. Like, we know how this ends, right? So talk to the guys, give them some encouragement.
Let's start with the dark things that we hear, the dark things that we feel, right? The negative things that happen in life. That take hope, they take peace, they open the door up for accusation, for condemnation, whether it's from myself or just this general sensation. That is not from God. And look, if you are listening to this podcast and you're not a Christian, okay, hear it this way. People were not created to live like that. That's not normal, right? It is not normal for people to tolerate within themselves hopelessness, worthlessness, self-hatred. It's not normal. And it's coming from something that hates you, right? And you got to think of it like this, like turning purpose into pain is something I'm very, very good at doing. This is a big part of my entire coaching, everything. Like, how do we grab this pain by the neck and how do we make it our slave?
Right.
If like, take what you're going through, take what you're hearing, take what you're feeling. And you have to get very, very clear on, okay, if this was true, why would that matter? What impact would that have? Would it be for me? Would it be for somebody else? Right. So for myself, it was that my life was worthless. Okay. But it was deeper than that. The layer deeper than that was that if I was here, people's lives were going to be worse. That was the real pain. That was the real pain, that I would not be able to add value to people. So then that's what the enemy's doing. I was not made to live like this. I was not made to feel like this. This is not from God. This is not normal.
Yeah.
That's the enemy to destroy, disrupt, or to take something. The thing that it was taking was that, like, what's the opposite of me feeling like as long as I'm here, I'm going to ruin things for somebody else? The opposite of that is me being here means that life is going to be better for somebody else. That's the opposite, right? And so if we can learn from regret and from what the enemy is saying to see the opposite, you mentioned reverse engineering. That's great. If we can flip that around, we are not only going to be able to see what the enemy is doing, but we're going to be able to see why he's doing it and what he's trying to prevent. And that is where great inspiration, great direction, and great actions come from. The moment you realize that your enemy is trying to prevent you from this thing for this reason, that means your destiny is right there. And all you got to do is buckle down and pursue that, become that. And it's funny because the enemy like just shows his cards by him yelling at me for years about myself and certain things. It made it really easy for me to find out what I was made to do in this life. Yeah. Right. And that's the same thing for you guys. There is a war going on. Listen to what the enemy's saying. Flip it around. You will know exactly what your destiny is. Just have the freaking courage to do it.
Yeah. Well said, man. Amen. The enemy, you know, he's okay if we can get to that point. What you just said, he's okay with us adopting that philosophy of victory and you know, strength and purpose and all that. He's okay. And in fact, he'd love us to do it by ourselves. Like, because he knows if we isolate, that eventually will start to crumble. That theory, that foundation will start to crumble. So my encouragement in saying all that to say, get some people around you, get a coach, get some 2 or 3 guys. It doesn't have to be 20. Get a couple guys that you trust, that are like-minded, that will hold you to the fire on some things. Because the enemy, even if you've got it all buttoned up, if you're by yourself, that won't last long and you can't sustain. So I will say, get somebody in your life like Greg. So I say, go to gregwanberg.com. You can get all of his resources. You can reach out to him and set an appointment. He can definitely help talk you through some things, walk you through some things, because he's been there, and he's not just preaching down from the top of the mountain to you. He's right beside you because he knows what you're going through. So with that, audience, he's been Greg Wanberg. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.